Look at that. That's me. So this is my first time streaming on YouTube. I've never done it before. We'll see how it turns out. I figured the first time I should probably try to stream just on YouTube, just to see how it is. And then once I get comfortable with it, I can try to multi-stream if that works. Let's see if the chat is working. Oops. Okay. So it is there. It just takes much longer, like 10 seconds or something. And this is with low latency. So a little bit annoying, but I guess it works. So what I want to do today, what is going on here? Oh, because I built EM scripting. I see. We're going to ignore that for now. All right. Hello. Yes. As you can see, the reason that happens is just because my, what do you call it? This JSON file in here, source, compile commands, right? So this is generated every time I build the project, and that means that whenever I build for EM scripting, it's going to be replaced. And it doesn't really, the clang-d file reloads and it just gets kind of confused. Anyway, I guess we can start. Hello everyone. Today is the first time I'm trying to stream on YouTube. We will see how that goes. I figured I would try to stream on YouTube for the first time solo. If I do it 2-3 more times and it seems to work, and it seems to work well, then I can try multi-streaming in a couple of like next week or something like that. But I think everything is working. I think the chat is working. So I guess we can just kind of start. What I was thinking about today is we are having these primitives and they work because I just paste in the vertex data right here. And similarly with my default texture, it's just some binary data that I pasted in. But whenever I want to load a specific texture or a specific model, let's say, I need to load that from a file. Now the file, I'm not going to have it as a single file here in the future. These will all be packaged, but I'm thinking maybe for now it's easier to just put them as files here until I make a package manager or binary compressor, something like that. So that means that what we need to do today is we are having our game and we are creating entities like this. Now, entity is basically anything with a position in the world. So if it has a position, it's an entity right now. And if it's not an entity, it's also not being drawn, because how do you draw something without the position? I'm not sure if that's even possible. Like you could have some like default states, but then that would still be a default entity, right? So that means that we are replacing our some of these parameters. So we are creating a primitive here. So this is the primitive enum, but then right after we are having an i32, and this i32 is the program, OpenGL program, I believe. Yeah, program ID. I don't really want to use a program ID. Instead, what I want to do is I want to, excuse me, I want to have my shaders and load them with, basically I want to load the shader, compile it, and get back my pointer to the shader, similar to the mesh. And then I can have that in the game header over here somewhere. Now, the thing is, in OpenGL, if I want to do this for emscripten, I need to have the actual binary data. I need, well, not everything is binary data, but I need to have the text of the actual shader as a string, because apparently you can only compile for your specific, in OpenGL, you can only compile the shader for your system. You can compile it for an NVIDIA card, and then it will run on a different similar NVIDIA card. But you can't do something like with DirectX, where you are sort of pre-compiling it into some intermediate form. I'm not an expert in this, so I don't know exactly the word it's called, the word for it, what it's called. But there's this, you have the text of the shader, and then you have the intermediate form, which is not quite binary, but it's also not quite text. And then that intermediate form is compiled on the graphics card itself. So that means that from the perspective of the game, whatever we load is just going to be a blob. And then we take that blob and we shove it into our shader compiler function, and then we get back our shader program. Now, I think it does make sense to bundle together the like every shader that you need. So maybe I should open up Paint or something. So we have our vertex shader, and we have our pixel shader. I don't know if I should rename this to fragment shader. People like to do that. I guess it's technically correct, but I like pixel shader because it's so obvious what it is. And maybe in some ways it's more accurate to call it fragment shader, but just, you know, pixel shader, for what I'm doing, it seems like a good name. So the question then is, well, I have a if I have a vertex shader, am I ever not going to have a pixel shader, or vice versa? I haven't encountered a situation like that before in my life, but probably it's more common than I think. But I feel like if I'm making a program, which is like a bundle of all the shaders, then at least for this program, for this game, we can just say, okay, we always have to have a valid vertex shader and a valid pixel shader, and this is our, you know, program. If I can draw, if program, this is why I'm using this. So that means that I am loading the vertex shader binary, whatever that is. Like, sure, it could be text or it could be something different. And I'm loading the pixel shader binary data, and then I'm throwing that to the compiler. I get back, hey, it's okay. I get a program, which is basically just the blobs. Or so I guess I don't get back the blobs. The blobs are uploaded to the. See, this is the thing, right? I am not super experienced in this, but if I compile the shaders, I get back some binary blobs. Those blobs are going to be fairly small, hundreds of kilobytes at most. You can have larger shaders, but I'm not going to write larger shaders than that. So it's going to be a binary blob of a couple hundred kilobytes. But do I want to load all of the programs at once at boot? Or do I want to dynamically sort of manage the programs as well? This is the question, because I'm thinking right now that rather than putting everything into the game and have the game manage everything, there's going to be a distinction between two types. One type is the things that need to be loaded dynamically because, maybe the graphics card can't load every object in the entire game plus every UI element and texture and whatever at the same time. I don't suspect I'm going to be using more than a couple hundred megabytes for the entire game. So like it's very feasible that at least for this game I could do that. But I would like to avoid doing that and like just think about the problem of managing the vertex data, texture data, animations, and so on. When it comes to the shaders, I feel like, okay, you have two ways of doing it typically. So one way is people really like to just dynamically load the shader the first time it's used. And then, after that it's loaded into memory, but it might not be like loaded into the graphics card all the time, but it's going to be it's going to be compiled at least. So, but what that means that very often you're going to have stutters, and maybe if you have played some games or even some emulators or something like this, you run into an area and then immediately you get a bunch of frame stutters because there's 50 shaders that needs to compile, and they are not all compiled when you enter the room or something like that. It's like whenever they're first being drawn. And that's like the worst possible way that you can do it, in my opinion. The second option is to pre-compile all the shaders, and you can even pre-compile it for your system and store them as binary data on the computer. And that's something that you can do. I think Unreal does that as an optional setting. But the problem with Unreal is that you have thousands of shaders, and some of the shaders can be pretty large. Half a megabyte, 1 megabyte, 2 megabytes, I'm not sure. So then you can have hundreds of megabytes of shaders. and that's also not optimal. I am thinking that I'm going to have a limited number of shaders, and they're all going to be fairly small. So probably I can just compile all of those on boot, probably even load them all into the graphics card and just depend on those. And in that case, I will just have my enum with, like, similar to the primitives. There's only a limited number of them. They take a limited number of bytes on the graphics card. So I'm just gonna type def enum my shader programs. So right now I have 3 shaders. I want to view the Explorer. So we have color, texture, and font. So then I will probably just, for all these, I will just compile them and then I will reference them in my game here. So this would be the color. This one would be the, what is this? Texture program. And then I guess this text create, which is a main. It's this one, right? So this would be the font program. And these functions are now not taking a shader program ID. They are taking a shader program. And the shader program can still live on the state, I guess. So it would be a program. Now I forget how I'm doing my structs. Yeah, I'm doing it like this. I'm not having a underscore. And we could do the same thing, like I or bool loaded, or what did I do? Created and ready. Maybe this goes into graphics. But now I don't know how large it is. So this is it's an interesting problem, right? Because I have my arenas, and probably the easiest thing to do is just to push this memory on the arena. Here, static arena, and then I just have like a pointer to that. That's the simplest thing. And the reason why I'm not doing the same here meshes. Where is this going actually? Now I'm not sure. Graphics mesh get. You are doing what? It goes into graphics meshes. But graphics meshes is a pointer. So this is not. This is a bad thing to do. So there's nothing wrong with having the mesh here as a as a as a pointer. But I need to push it somewhere. And this mesh, well, the size of this is actually static. And I think the reason why I did this was because in main here where I do my allocate memory, I am pushing the graphics. Where am I adding this? Static arena. Aha, okay. I am allocating that into the arena. So that is actually valid. Okay. This is a pointer. This is a pointer to some memory on the arena. And the reason is just because I like having the bools. Like I like to have this right next to the actual data instead of having multiple pointers back and forth. So should I do the same with the program? Maybe I want to make this into some kind of macro. Let's see. Let's just do it the same as I was doing the other one. So shader program. And this is not an array anymore. What should we call this? I want to make a macro out of this. Stride. Maybe I'll just make it a function instead. So something like push and we have a pointer. Let's see. We have a stride and a count. And then we have an I32 stride dest and a void star dest. And finally, we have an arena. So then this would be oh, Let's just copy this, right? So this is our stride test. Dynamic size array. Well, this is actually a star star. And this doesn't really return anything. Or do we just return this? We're not going to be using this function very much. So this is the stride. I did it wrong. And this goes into s dot meshes. And then we do something similar with a program. But I don't know how large the program is. Or do I? Yeah, redefinition, fine. So the problem is this thing here is my helper struct. It has the sources, but we don't actually need the sources. And it has the program integers. I think I only really need this. And these. So in that case, I do have everything. Like it's a static source. I get it back a blob, but I upload that blob immediately to the graphics card. And then I like set and forget. Now the alternative here would be to compile them, get the blob, but then I would have to kind of redesign how this works. So let's see how. How messed up is this? Shader program, get shader program. Where I need to read the source again. Create shader program. Create shader program. This is the thing, right? So this can be our setup. And maybe we will now we have a bunch of errors. Replace. Oh. Maybe only whole words. You can see here I have that stored. Is there even any errors right now? Hmm? This is fine for now. I never started Remedy. Yeah. So that kind of just works incidentally because I happen to make my enum the same number as the actual programs. That's not a good way to keep it, right? So if we go back here, I think I'm figuring out what to do. This is my create shader program. And what you can see here We get the shader compile status success, vertex shader, and so that's just immediately on the graphics card. Is there any way to get this as a blob? I'm gonna have to check this. Aha, okay. So there's this get program binary. I'm not going to save it to a file. I'm just going to store it in my in the RAM. I can't do this because I need to support WebGL. I am fine with doing this. Yeah. Web GPU. This is the thing that I should do instead. So, okay. I have decided we are not caring about this. We are uploading everything at once. I don't need to store the shaders because they're literally compiled in milliseconds. In milliseconds. I didn't measure how long, but it's not long. So we create our shader program with this shader program setup, and we get back this, but I am not putting it back in there. I need a shader. I need this that I made. And then I can do my graphics. I feel like I'm kind of mixing, possibly. Like here, graphics underscore. I'll see what I'm going to do about that in the future. But yeah, basically, the program Do I ever use this? Where are you used? We set it there. But then we delete this reference completely. We never really come back to that. We just set the program and that's it. So these are they gone? If we just assume they are always going to be loaded, we don't even need to deload them, right? Or maybe I should, just to see that everything is there that I'm expecting. The program definitely goes down here. And then we have our uniform count, shader uniform. But this index, uniform block count. What's the difference between this one and this one? Am I really using both of them? Aha, I do. I guess because they're using different functions. It's only used there. And this one is used there. And the shader attributes I do need, I think. I'm setting it up here, but in my drawing function, do I even use it? Or is it all just part of the program? I think it's just part of the setup. So then we will, well, I can't, should I leave them there? Data type, location, stride, offsets, name, type. Let's start here and see how that goes. So, like I said, I have a bunch of errors. We have my we have the GSP shader uh, graphics shader program. All right. Oh, setup data. I need this type. You can see here type. Do I use the name at all? Only in the setup. What is a good way of doing this? So the name I use only once. The type needs to be reused and the index needs to be reused. But this type, I need it here. And I do like being able to set it up like this. Is it worth messing with this at all? Is it worth it? And this thing and this thing. Maybe this doesn't make any sense. So this thing can still be in the game. We can just call it shaders. Or do we? Shader bundle. Shader doesn't work. This is hard. This is very hard. Maybe I just call it graphics shader program. I think that's what I'm gonna do. So let's go through all of these. Shader program. No results, no results. Okay. That last edit, I swear. So we go up here. Shader program get result. Let's do something similar to here. If it's out of bounds, okay. Shader or G shader is equal to maybe it's not worth it. Program count. We are grabbing ID, the address of that, and then we do exactly the same thing. Mm-hmm. An ID Yep. Invalid program ID. And then we return the result. And this is actually shader program get. Let's go to graphic. Let's take this entire thing and just put it in game. We can move this around later, but that's where it should go. And same thing for this one. And it should be called mesh get. So I guess we are adding this to the game header here. Same for the other one. And well, I have to create it first, and then I make the setups. I don't want to have the uh, character buffers in here. Not there. These things. They are now gone. All right. VS sources. Well, incompatible, right? Const car, const star. That's not correct? p as source. Okay, looks good. Graphics SP attributes. Attribute count. Ready. Well, it's not that one actually. It's the GSP. Ready equals true. And then we have this thing. And this thing should not be here at all. Color, texture. Ah, here, fonts. This should be like in the main function, I think. It shouldn't really be this. It should be some kind of meta file with this function 3 times, and then it's just reading the meta. But again, I don't want to put effort into that at the moment. Let's take the first one. And just see how we're doing it. Main. We need to init the graphics. But before I can set up the primitives, or actually no. No, this is fine. Default texture. This is a little bit too involved. Compile shaders, this one. Length. Let's see. I need to use the bathroom first, so I'll be right back. microphone was off. I have never streamed on YouTube before, and I can't really figure out how this works. But I was talking, or like I was having this chat loaded, but actually you guys are on this one, so I didn't see any messages. So let's fix that real quick. I don't know of a better way to do this than just that. I can't paste that. Okay. Can I pop out this? Yeah, cool. So yeah, sorry about that, guys. This is just me learning. So someone asked what color extension am I using looks really cool. I am, first of all, I'm using, it's VS Code, but it's called VS Codium. So you can see here, it's an open source alternative to Visual Studio Code, right? And it's basically just Visual Studio Code without the tracking. Now, because it doesn't have any tracking, it also doesn't support all of the what do you call them? The extensions, right? Here, extensions. So, for example, Microsoft C++ doesn't exist here. It would it's an extension that looks similar to this one, and yeah, it just doesn't exist here because it's only supported on their official one. I don't think it's a technical thing. It's rather a terms of service kind of thing. So just be aware of that. I'm using ClangD, so it works fine. And apparently, you're able to download their source. I think it's open source, and you can compile it yourself, or you can download the binary and you can add it yourself. I'm not using Microsoft MSVC, so that's fine for me. So that's my IDE. Then when it comes to the color extension, you can actually see my extensions here, my installed ones. I'm using Synthwave 84. Now, by default, you have the glow, and I actually like the glow, but it's a little bit resource intensive, and also it's kind of buggy. Like it needs to reload a lot. It doesn't really work very well. So I'm just using the base one without the glow. Yeah, that's what I'm doing. All right. Where was I? I wanted to do this. So this load file, read a file into collect arenas. I have this read file with an arena. So we have the VS source. Let's do read file path. The arena is going to be Scratch. And then we give it a name. Let's call it vertex VS. Let's just call it the same thing. my this name, I think it's actually limited by 32 characters, so I can't be too verbose. Like I could increase it, but no point. So let's just call it color vertex shader. And then we have the file type. It's a text, I guess. I forget how I wrote this. Name type. And we get it back as a file. Cool. And we do the same thing with the pixel shader. So we are adding shader program gets. Shader program gets. No, shader program gets state. And I want to grab the shader program color. Color program. We get this a G shader program. And then from there, we get the graphics shader program. Now, this is a little bit annoying to write every time, but I guess I'm not going to be writing it so many times. So then we set the stuff, uniforms, attributes, and then we create the shader program. We create it with, what do you need? The G shader program. Oh, GSP. I'm going to rename this later. And then we give it the source vs file dot data ps file dot data, and these are U8s. So I guess I should do I should just Hanscar. Let's just cast them. And this is super annoying to write, but what can you do? Duplicate const. What do you mean? The syntax for this is really weird for me. Like I understand what it says. If you go back a couple days or like 2 weeks, maybe I figure it out what it means on stream. But the fact that you have to do the const star, it's just really awkward. So then we create the shader program, and then instead of free file, we're doing pop, arena pop. And the last one we did was PS file. So we need to do them in order now, simply because this is a linear allocator still. Now I kind of have to do this 3 times and have it all work out. This graphics setup, I don't even know if it's doing anything right now. So we're doing the same thing. Now it's the texture program. Font program. Oh, So yeah, this is gone now. Conflicting types. We are not doing this anymore. This is gone. Let's see, where are the last errors? These don't exist anymore. Incompatible types. Are you sure? Where's this? 300. Ah, it did link me there. You're getting this from the state now, and you get the shader program. No, GSP data. Yeah. Yeah, I think it was very worth not really reprogramming this in any real way. It can be unoptimized. So we have more issues. Mesh create is doing the same thing. Shader program state. This is a G shader program. A little bit boring. It's mostly like cleanup stuff. Cool. Even more. In the drawing function. That makes sense. So we get the mesh. Shader program ID. If it's not the same, SP. All right. Let's see if this is still working. Shader program ID 0 is out of bounds. Really? Now, let me just check if I did another dumb thing, because I noticed that no one is chatting right now, and I just want to double check that I'm not missing somehow again. I don't even know how to navigate this. Stream health, no data. Where is my... Okay, I am live. Okay, no one is chatting, so that's fine. I'm not sad or anything. I'm just saying, at least I know that it's not me, it's you guys. All right. So, what was the error? The thing was out of bounds. Oh, actually, okay. How is this out of bounds? ID 0. Because I never added any. I see. So how did I add the mesh? Is it inside this function? Primitive create? Yeah. Yeah. So the problem is on when I do it like this, I am just sort of hoping. I'm hoping that I'm calling them in the right order. But that doesn't have to necessarily be the case. Because like, okay, this program value is the ID is 0. The next one is 1. because that's just how I set up my enums. But if I just do my count plus plus, I can add more checks here, right? So maybe I will do it like this for now. This will be a sanity check that state shader program or graphics shader program or program count plus plus, and TFL asserts that the graphics count is equal to ID plus 1. So what this is saying is that, okay, if I create my ID with ID 0, then I'm expecting their count to be 1 after. And if it's not, then I'm unaligned on my creation process. Basically, I called this create shader program in the wrong order for the wrong enum, right? That's not a great way of solving the issue. The good way of doing it would be just to push, like I have my enum and then like I push onto an array, and then that array has the ID, and it would just so happen that the enum and the ID aligns. But this is acceptable for now, I think, especially since it's not actually an issue. The program is always going to be created the same way. These programs, at least in OpenGL. Then you have these things. And while, yes, the primitives are going to be that way, the meshes themselves are not. But the mesh is completely different. So this is just buffers for the. I'm just setting up vertices for the, triangle, rectangle indices. But I'm actually creating the mesh on the game. So then it doesn't make sense to have them aligned or anything. So I think that works. Yeah. This assert comes before. Also, this is just assert. Mm-hmm. I'll Arena Alok. Why did this not work? Oh, because of the mesh. I'm doing the same thing twice. Oh no. Static Arena. The stride goes program stride. Really? So we have a result. We say it's true. I do wonder. We are having our static arena. It's in 1D79 blocks. It would be this one, I think. I guess we can check. Yeah, this one, 5,808. Oops. I wanted to show you. Here, allocated. And then we create the window. This is fine. We return this GSP. It's created. We grab that. So this is where it's going to crash if something is wrong, which it does. So it's something about my pointer logic is incorrect. let's take a peek here. We have been writing there, state static block. Oops, here it is. So let's compare. They are one and the same. So which, this one, that looks good to me. Create shader. This looks good to me. Access violation. So I guess I have to look this up. DL3, I believe. Oh, I see what's happening. I see what's going on. This is incorrect. And then we need to do that. Because this is an array. GL compile. This thing. This function is expecting this to be a pointer to a pointer, an array of pointers, right? So that's why we have const char star, const star. It's a constant array of constant pointers, or constant char pointers. But what I was doing, I was just casting it immediately to that without taking any precaution. So then this function tried to dereference the data in here, which was, invalid memory. So that's what happened right there. Now, of course, we need to do this for all of them. But I think this is an automatic cast, so I don't have to fiddle around with it too much. So now it should work. Let's hope. And now we're back to where we were. Very nice. So that means that this is now correct. I know that I wrote that at the very, very beginning, but that was just like coincidental. But now it's actually working the way that you would expect. Now, again, it only works that way because I literally put them in the right order, just like it was before. But at least I'm having my check in here saying that, oh, it has to be in the correct order. All right, so that's the shader program. Now it's the textures. And for the texture, I do want to add my own library. It's actually already in the project. So if you go to dependencies, tools, you have my yoga right here. So instead of using PNG, that's what I'm going to be using. PNG, BMP, JPEG, anything like that. I'm going to be using my own. Here we go. Texture IDs. So one thing I'm thinking about this primitive creates. I guess we could say if this is a null pointer, texture get. Do something. Texture get. So this is another one of these things that we need to adjust. Now textures definitely need to be loaded and unloaded, I think. Do they need to be loaded from the from file? Maybe not. But I haven't gotten that far yet. So the texture is going to be very, very similar to the mesh, I think. So I don't really want to spend too much time rewriting all of this before I have an asset manager, basically, or packaging thing, like I said in the beginning. But we can rewrite this same way. I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I'm getting a little bit tired. So maybe we'll just finish this up for now. Now, the funny thing, well, actually, one thing I need to do before I continue. Hmm? Yeah, yeah, yeah. Also, hold on. I need one small break. You will just refill my water. So I'll be right back. I am back. All right. Let's let's try to wake up a little bit for the last, I don't know, 20 minutes or so. Yeah, this compiled. And we changed this name. So we have texture here. No, I don't. Yeah, that's in the game. No, it's not. It's an OpenGL. I see. So this should be similar to the other ones, graphics texture. So let's start there. For some reason it doesn't want to do that. I see. I was doing something like how OOP does it, where you have users and then when the users reach 0, then you completely free it. Yeah, you can see here users plus plus and then users. Well, I never do minus minus, I guess. But, maybe that's a good idea, maybe not. Let's delete it for now because we're not actually using it. No need to complicate it. Bind index, texture tag, RGBA, R, or that's OpenGL stuff. But again, we need to go. Oh, let's start with compiling. Yeah. Users. And this is running just fine. So now we can move the texture into the game better. And the texture itself is going to be like the bitmap is going to be loaded into Scratch memory. So we don't actually need to have this be dynamic. This will just be exactly like before, this ints and whatever, and ready doesn't go there. This texture tag comes from, well, it's in OpenGL. Okay. But I have a similar texture type, diffuse specular. I don't know if I've used that anywhere. I think maybe no. So let's start with here. Allocate memory again. Yeah, I already have that. Seems a bit low, maybe. We'll see. Graphics. This bitmap is in game. So that's fine. VFX. Uh-huh. Maximum texture size. Maybe that should be in the game. Yeah, let's change this to state. Bind index. Uh-huh. Where am I even calling this from? Reference from main. I guess just main right now. Weird. Okay. This bind index should be part of the graphics texture. It already is. So this is kind of annoying. Because this is important for the draw later. You can see here. So in OpenGL, at least, you have different texture slots. I think up to 8 or 16 or something like that. Hey, Mars Ninja. This is VS Codium. This is what I'm using. I don't know if you can read that actually. I actually I can just copy that. If I'm able to post it, YouTube hello. Oh, it's too long. Well, I guess because YouTube is pretty nice. You can just screenshot this or something, pause, go back if you want. I don't think this is very important, but you know, this is what I'm using if you're interested. So the question now is, well, I have a bind index, but that's maybe only relevant to OpenGL. And I do like to try to keep the game as abstracted as possible from the engine. Now, I can assign a bind index. Maybe I will do this right. That my bind index is always, and maybe this is what I was thinking about when I created it in game H here. I have diffuse, specular, bump, normal, and count. I don't think I'm going to be needing more. And OpenGL definitely supports enough. So maybe I just use this one as my bind index. So then we go back to OpenGL, texture create. Texture type. Oh, what is this type? What is this type? I forget what this is. Fair enough. Texture type. Maybe we just do that. My thoughts / philosophy on using AI to help is that it's fine to use it to help, but you shouldn't replace it for your thought process. I had a little 2-minute rant yesterday about it because someone asked something similar. And, I am not an expert on AI or anything, but I have used it for the past 2 years on and off. And in some ways, it has really boosted my productivity in terms of learning new things. But at the same time, it's only as valuable as what you put into it. So if you ask it a very general question, it will give you a very vague answer. If you ask it a very specific question, it could give you a very specific answer, or it might just lie to you. And you have to rely on your own knowledge to be able to tell the difference. So, in this vague kind of way, it can lead you towards what is the right way to start learning something new. And that's sort of the same as just a Google prompt. Like you go to Google, you type in, how do I do X? And then it gives you a bunch of links. And then you just kind of have to read through it. But it's pretty funny that most people who are like, everyone kind of says AI is probably useful for something that I'm not an expert on. But the thing that I'm an expert on, it's very bad. Like that's kind of the thing. Like people are talking about, oh, I don't like AI is not useful for me as an artist, but maybe it's good for mathematicians. But then mathematicians are saying, well, it's trash for math, but maybe it's good for art because that's not their field. So maybe that makes sense. Bind index here, extra type. If that doesn't make sense, you can ask me again. Yeah, like as a Google replacement, it's pretty good. As a summarizer or just giving an overview or as, throwing ideas at it and see what comes out is pretty good. But to vibe code something, it's not useful because what ends up happening is that you keep telling it over and over, oh, this is wrong, this is not working, I don't understand. And you just prompting and prompting infinitely, and the LLM doesn't know what the problem is, or like it doesn't really understand the issue. It's not problem solving, it's just gambling. It's not even like a jack of all trades, master of none. The fundamental problem is that it's a gambling machine. You are giving it some input, and then you throw the dice and hope that you get a good answer. And that's, if you want something vague, you get something vague back. It's like very likely to be accurate. If you ask something specific, it's pretty likely to be inaccurate, but it might also be good. But you have to know already to be able to tell the difference. And what did I say? It's not actually problem solving. So whenever you're asking it to modify something or build something, it can you can prompt it such that it gives you back something that already exists, but then it's something that it's only as good as the quality of the thing that already existed. And if it's too similar, then that's intellectual property, you're just stealing it. And it was funny because I think it was Anthropic, they made this C compiler. Let's see here. Claude's C compiler. And people, like, this was a big thing a couple of weeks ago. And what this is they just prompted Claude to make a compiler for C. And it cost $20,000 or something for that in terms of tokens and electrical energy. And if you go to the very beginning, the number one issue is hello world does not compile. And not only that, people went through some of the source code, and the source code it's just LLVM, basically, like it's Clang. So like it's stealing, or was it Clang? I think it was LLVM or it was GCC. It stole a bunch of code from that. Like I'm saying stealing. The LLM doesn't know what it's doing, but it copy pasted existing code in large snippets from GCC or LLVM, and then it glued it together in a way that made the code extremely inefficient. There was one graph I saw, Claude C compiler. There was one graph I saw where a program that was they compared the time for the execution of the program, and it was like 20,000 times slower in one specific instance. Like most of the time it was 10 times slower, 20 times slower, and then one case it was 20,000 times slower, because it doesn't really know how to, like, it doesn't think about how to implement something. It's just making something that passes a test no matter how bad it is. And that, so like, this is the best thing AI can do. And in one way, okay, sure, it's a C compiler that they vibe coded essentially, but it costed a ton of money. It doesn't even really work, and and most of the good code in here is essentially stolen. So take that as you will. I use it as a fancy tool to summarize forum threads and documentation. So Google is having something pretty nice where you can add. Well, I was actually prompting earlier today because I didn't know about something specific in OpenGL. If I could compile a binary blob, because the issue is that I'm using WebGL and OpenGL on Windows, and while I could Google WebGL shader blob compiling, it's faster and more accurate in my experience to just ask Gemini, because Gemini is trained on Google's data anyway. They're just trolling the internet. Basically, the entire internet is they're searching through the entire internet once every couple days, couple weeks. Yeah, that's true. There's always one guy asking about LLMs. I know that OpenGL ES3 has WASM support. I am using WASM. Or I'm using EM scripting to compile WASM, and then this one is using WebGL. And well, it's a little bit confusing to me because you have WebGL, which is the actual API, and then you have OpenGL ES3, which is the targeting API that EM Scripton is using to convert everything. It's kind of a black box for me. No, I didn't go that far. So I am apparently it's not so difficult to do that, to just compile directly to WASM and using WebGL directly. But I figured if I didn't want to spend a year on this project, it was better for me to just use EM scripting. The alternative was to use Raylib. Is it Raylib that is the one that had the new one? No, there's another one. I forget what which one. But I was looking at multi-platform libraries to use, and I just didn't like them. Not Sogol. SDL3 I was looking at, because SDL just came out with the third version a couple of months ago. Well, this is 3.4.2, but I figured I would rather go. I wanted to learn more, like deeper. It's just another API abstraction. Yeah, like I wasn't interested in learning SDL. I was interested in trying to target multiple platforms. And for whatever I'm going to be making, EM scripting was enough. And if I would not use this, I would look into web GPU. But I don't know. For now, I'm literally trying to make like the first thing that I can actually release. Now, funnily enough, this is having some errors that I haven't been fixing. So whatever I had that was working before, it's kind of broken now. So this is Windows only at the moment, which is a little bit sad. SDL is mostly used for media like window creation. Well, SDL you can target. As far as I know, SDL allows you to very easily target Linux and Windows, but you can use SDL on a browser as well using WASM, I believe. Or is that only SDL2? Or maybe you use SDL to target EM script and to compile. I don't know. Like it's kind of just ridiculous to me. It's a platform abstraction, yeah, but the one platform is the browser, isn't it? Anyway, I wanted to finish this today, so let's just continue. we have our texture type, texture ID. This I need to. That's the thing. I can create native apps for other operate OS systems, operating systems, while at the same time having WASM support. Yeah. Well, I looked at SDL for maybe a day, and I was just figuring I don't want to write some abstracted shader language, because then you're kind of targeting SDL as a platform rather than any actual platform. And then like I just didn't want to do that. Texture count plus plus. So this is now state graphics. And it's not this. It's not this at all. Let's go and fix this one. Also, we should move this to game. So basically what I'm doing right now is I have my OpenGL mesh, OpenGL shader program, OpenGL texture, and I'm abstracting it so that I can have that in the game state. And then I have an opaque sort of like data array. And this data array is the actual implementation data. So it would be the same as this one, but with textures instead, of course. Texture count, texture ID. This is not necessarily like this is true for now, but when I have this more dynamic, it's not going to be true anymore. So texture count, texture result. So let's see. Where did we call this? Incompatible, yeah. I'm not sure what's the best way to do this. This is just another null pointer. But do I have a max texture? Well, I do have texture max. Because these are my, well, no, not that one. Type count. I32. Hmm. I think I'm getting too tired for this. Maybe I'll just patch everything up before I finish up. Some of these maybe I should save later. Not right now. Check error. Really? Why is this an issue all of a sudden? Yeah, go error by error. That's a very good way of programming, I think. The compiler is there to help you. The reason why you get so many errors is because they actually, like, these are the things I need to fix. But most of them, I can just think about it. Like, I don't know why this is an error all of a sudden. Did I like forget to close a function or something? Like, that's the only thing. Oh, wait, no. EM scripting. EM scripting is broken right now. So it shouldn't even be. It shouldn't even be a thing. Mesh create. Conflicting types. Why? Uh-huh. I am sorry, but I'm kind of finding my own tiredness. Why is this not? It's exactly the same. Ah, it was not an I-32 anymore. Fair enough. Yes. Texture tag. Here we go. So we have texture get, and then we have GFX texture. And then I can just paste that in here, except there, out of all places. And then we'll return the texture at the very end. Mem sets 0. Let's see. This is not finished. Did I just start with the EM script? And no, I've been working on this for 2 months. It's been working all the time. It's actually, I think this error specifically is just something with ClangD being confused, because when I'm compiling my projects, I am replacing this every time. But I think if I'm having an error here, then this can create an error, and then ClangD is, upset for some reason. So like, it's definitely not that I forget to include anything, because it's been working like the entire time for 2 months. And also, is this even in the EM scripting path? Yes, it is. So yeah, don't worry about that. That's not the issue. When everything else is fixed, it will also magically be fixed. I was just very confused by why this one specifically, why suddenly VA start is an undeclared library function. But usually when that happens, it's just because the the Clangd server cannot compile the entire project, and then there's some include that it's missing, and then it's panicking about undeclared functions. So I think that's what's going on. Like I said, texture text, we have graphics texture. And we delete that, and then we can do something a little bit clever here, I guess. So we take this one. Memset is, yeah, so definitely this one is, this is definitely declared, as you can see probably here. So ignore that. This is size of texture. Plus size of, I can't type when I'm hungry. Let's see, GFX texture. Yeah, that's just a little bit clever, I think. So now let's see what else we have. Oh, I'm compiling like that. That's the reason why. So look at this now. OpenGL. Well, this is still the wrong path. So I guess we just got to go on the errors. 171 states. Now Clangd recompiled. I am not using CMake. Oh, the graphics. I see. Texture gets state. And we get texture back. Is it even used later? It gave me an ID, but I think I never actually stored it. Texture ID. This is a different one. This font graphics needs texture pointer instead. Okay. So right now I'm using this get texture here. Wait. Maybe I'm not. I'm doing it in the draw. I'm doing it here. So let's not do that there. Mesh text. Curious to see the thing that I'm making looks like. Well, I guess I could just run this. No, it doesn't work. Well, I do have the entire project is public online. You can git clone this, and then you can build it. You can't build it with this one. This is out of date 1 month ago. I need to fix that. But this one works. No, not EM scripting. The Win32 one works. So once I clean this up a little bit, I'm gonna make sure that both of these work again. But I am just sort of, not fooling around, but I'm learning as I go, because I have never I have built a couple of toy engines before, but I never actually tried to like take it the whole way. Not on Windows. Yeah, don't worry about it. Sure. I will. It's multi-platform in theory. It used to be multi-platform. Now I broke everything and I need to just fix it before it's multi-platform again. But like I was saying, this texture get, one thing I like to do at this point is, how do I want to use it? Well, for each texture count, we are grabbing the VFX dot, no, mesh texture j dot data. We cast this. Oh, I see. I see. I see. So this one, that should go there. And well, actually, it shouldn't even be texture count because each texture has a certain type, and you can only have one normal texture, one bump texture, one whatever. What backend am I using? So I'm using OpenGL. Does OpenGL count as a backend? I thought it was just a graphics API. Like the I am programming a backend myself, and the backend there's a backend for Windows and a backend for Wasm, and both of them are using OpenGL. I'm thinking about if I should do DirectX 11 as well, but I definitely wouldn't do that before I have an actual playable thing. Because right now I'm working on the engine, and before I start working on the game itself, and I feel comfortable that hey, this engine works well enough for what I'm trying to do. For example, I need to write a UI library also. Once that is done, I can import models, start doing animations. Once that is working, then I can like work on the game, and at some point after that, I can think about using DirectX for Windows. But for now, everything is OpenGL. The Windows version is using OpenGL. Is it 4.0 or 3.2? I have it here somewhere. Graphics in it. Okay, so I'm requesting 4.6, but everything that I'm using is compatible with ES 3.0. I forget a little bit exactly. Yeah. The the major point is I can't go too high in the OpenGL stuff because then I have to write specific code for each platform, and I kind of want to avoid that. No, I don't get bored with rolling my own. I that's that's why I'm spending time on this. I like it. I am I have spent a couple years building toy engines and backends. So, that's kind of what I enjoy the most, I think. Although I am getting a little bit bored doing the same string string parsing and you know things like this. Yeah, it's fun to make custom engines. So these texture IDs, these should be textures, and they should be pointers as well. Is this a thing called graphics texture? Yeah, I just wrote it. I would like to get back to compiling before I finish because I forget to git push before I broke it. It was working. It was all was good, and then I forget to git push, and now I'm kind of stuck in my choice. Yeah, mesh create textures, texture count. I don't want to pass in texture count. It will be a null pointer or it will be valid. And oh, I will do this for texture type count. And then if textures I is not equal to null pointer, oh, so I guess this is an array of textures, texture pointers. I don't need to get the texture. Didn't I delete this? Mesh, graphics mesh, texture count, texture IDs. No, 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 no. Delete that. I don't want it. Why does this have? This is in the memory of like all the textures that exist. But I'm looking for. This shouldn't be valid. Probably ClangD making a fool of itself again. There we go. Okay. Texture IDs. No, 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 no. Nothing like this. See what I think I would rather have IDs here and get them, but then it's a conflict with this call. So this is a font. Maybe you can tell. And it's using this texture ID that I just created. And it's just the rasterized TTF font. can't I just index into the textures with enum values? Well, no, because then I need to assign a value to each texture. And that's what I was doing before. I was basically having an enum with all of my textures and then just assigning it in here. But now I'm trying to generate and delete them on the fly. And that's like the change in the thing that I'm trying to do. And I'm just trying to think how I want it to work. Because the best way to design an API is to write the code that uses the code first. Write the calls to the API before you write the API. And then you just know how the API should look like because you know how you want to use it. Now this font graphics texture, where is this created? Have dynamic array like textures struct with items count capacity that I pass around. So I don't have any dynamic arrays right now. Or well, I have some arenas that I can push in pop from. But the thing with the textures is that I load them or I generate them and then I create them on the graphics card and then I delete the local the memory that has the bitmap. So this font, if we go from the beginning here, we are reading a JSON file and that is this one. Here you have some text and it's like basically all the text that would be in the game. And from this, we get all of the glyphs that we need to generate. So we come back or we come down here and then we generate the shape of a particular string. Actually, this, I'm sorry, no, that's why I'm confused. Because the text create is after the font has already been generated. So when I'm generating the fonts, what was that? Here we have my TTFs and I generate bitmaps. And I initialize the font with the bitmaps. I get the raster back. Then I create the buffers. I get the textures. But there's only one texture. And this texture create needs the texture type. So we have, this needs to be the enum. diffuse. And there's only one for the fonts. So that's where that's coming from. Then down here, the textures. Mm, it shouldn't be there. This is what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to generalize. I have an entity, and the entity is having a mesh, and the mesh is the thing that's having the texture. So we're getting rid of that. This is also we're getting rid of that. This was maybe a little bit too much to rewrite in one go. Did I not save this? Yes. Now this is bad, or not bad. No. Like that's not the issue here. I can talk about the issue or I can try to solve it. But I think I might have to just come back tomorrow because I'm getting a little bit I'm getting a bit too tired and hungry to continue. I'm sorry to say. But here's the thing, right? I'm having this font graphics. It should probably be called something different. And this has some ID for OpenGL. And that's what I'm using to create my mesh later. I'm not explaining this very well. I'm truly sorry. Texture create. No, I'm sorry. I would recommend you maybe take a look at yesterday's stream if you want to see the program in action and if you want to see what I'm working on more specifically. I am going to have to come back to this tomorrow, I think, because I am unable to think right now. And changing the font struct is a little bit for me to handle, too much for me to handle right now. So I'm sorry about that. But you have my channel. You can take a look and you will see how it works. Yeah. I will try to be back tomorrow. Yeah, I really have to eat something. So thank you very much for watching. Bye.